7:32, and we'll call to order. Actually, I'll open the joint meeting of the tri-boards and ask the chairs to call their individual boards to order.
Call the Reading Board of Education to order at 7:33 p.m. for this regular meeting on January 31st, 2023. All members present in person, with the exception of Lori.
Okay,
I'll call the Easton Board to order at 7:33. The Reading Region 9 Joint Board of Education regular meeting. All members are present.
okay, and I will call the Region 9 board meeting to order at 7:33. Members present are Sarah Lieberger, Kathy Thompson, Karen O'Brien, Gwen Denny, myself, Mike D'Agostino, Todd Johnson, and Mary Lee Campbell. Okay. That brings us to our item 3, which is public comment. Is there any member of the public who wishes to make a comment at this time? Please step up to the podium. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Pause for 1 minute.
First time I've been here with
Making
the
much.
circle,
We'll come back.
usually it's been a summer circle.
Are we on to item 2 on the agenda?
We're gonna adjourn, we're gonna adjust the agenda.
We'll adjust the agenda after public comment.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Ann, can you just give me 1 minute?
No problem.
Okay. Item 2 is approval of the minutes, the October 25th Easton Reading and Region 9 joint meeting. I'm not sure, I always thought we approved them already at the board meetings, and that's why I just kind of skipped over that, but,
I just don't need any questions or comments on the writing side. And for the record, Laura has joined us at 7:34. Seeing none, we'll give them approved by unanimous consent.
Randy, do you want
Any
to?
comments? No suggestions? No? We're good. Unanimous consent.
Okay. And at Region 9, is there any comments on the, I'm sure we approved them already, but if you have.
Just a quick question, we have the first name of one of those island students that not my life.
Okay. Okay, so, we will edit to add the last name of the student on page 1, second paragraph. Any other edits or corrections? Hearing none, deemed approved by unanimous consent, we'll move on. Sorry, Ms. Manuski, you're the
No,
floor.
no.
Thank you.
I'm Ann Manuski. Thank you for having me speak this evening. So I'm a parent of 3 boys, in different times they went to school at San Jose State. 24-year resident here and a former recovering licensed professional counselor. And I know that this is about the central office budget but this is just an opportunity that I actually had time tonight to come to this meeting. So I've always been very concerned with education, and public education is taking a nosedive, as we all know. The concerns are children are not reading by 4th grade and 8th grade benchmarks. Both that our children are now being given CRT, SEL, which is psychological programming. Again, my background is counseling. And comprehensive sexualized education. None of this should be in the schools. The budget, there's a central office, but our budget is extreme. Children are basically not getting ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, and being taught that they can be anything they want to be. Boys want to be a boy, they can be a girl. A girl wants to be a boy. This gender confusion, and having worked in research in body dysmorphic disorder, it's heinous. It's got to stop. I said, I've been coming here for probably 17 years. My youngest child is a senior in high school, at another school. There are people in this room who are real good people who want things changed. The light, flashlight, it's illuminating all the states. And unfortunately, the blue states are going to be seen for what they are. So I hope this year, while you're looking at the budget, not all about the budget. What's it about? The children. I'm glad parents are pulling their kids out of the school district, out of school districts across Connecticut, and working in PEAs and putting them in private schools when their children are not getting an education. So I plead with you this year to make changes for all children. And I'll be at as many meetings as I can between this and the General Assembly meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there any further public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to board member comments. Start to my left. Laura? John? Anybody?
Do you want to go board by board? Because I've got some things to say.
Yeah, I'm just right.
Do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
So usually I don't like writing and reading stuff, but I wanted to get a few thoughts across quickly and effectively. So I want to talk briefly tonight about a couple things: technology, strategic planning, and governance. When the pandemic hit 3 years ago, we talked a lot about building the plane while we were flying it with respect to remote learning and the use of technology to maintain continuity of education. We, for the most part now, put school by Zoom in the rearview mirror, but we quickly adopted much more regular use of Chromebooks and Google Classroom in our day-to-day teaching and learning. I want to make an observation that's relevant to all 3 boards and districts, which is why I'm sharing it in this environment. We need to be intentional about introducing new technologies and practices, and we can no longer rely on emergency mode to justify not looking before we leave. We also need to be aware of some habits adopted during the crisis that are best left behind. Let me give you an example. Most of us at this table are tied to our professional lives 24/7 by cell phones in our pocket. The world has led us to be on 24/7. Work-life balance is a constant struggle, and mental health can be adversely affected by being in a permanent state of go. As adults, we acknowledge this reality and maintain a certain measure of free will over it. If you don't like a job that tells you to email all day, you can find a different job. Our students don't have the same luxuries and certainly don't have the maturity to understand their choices around technology. And until recently, our students would engage with teachers almost exclusively from bell to bell, but not on nights and weekends. Email opened up a new avenue for after-hours communication, but it was not until the pandemic that the floodgates felt like they were opening when prior norms disappeared. Gone are the days when a teacher would grade papers on an evening or a weekend and return them to students in class. Now, PowerSchool, Google Classroom, and email provide up-to-the-minute feedback in real time. Students get push notifications from Google Classroom about assignments that are graded, posted, or due as late as midnight the night before. Is this really what we want? Who is this helping? Let's be intentional about the way we deliver feedback and information to students and when we do it. I want to encourage the administration to be considerate of the impact of the use of technology and design professional learning opportunities to include that consideration. Part of caring for kids' mental health is letting them be kids and not miniature office workers who develop email anxiety, because they may get an assignment or a grade back at any moment of any day. And I want to encourage boards to provide adequate resources for this professional learning and ensure that healthy development of technology practice is a core component of our strategic planning efforts. Our faculty has a wide range of technical skills that the technology will be with us forever, and we're doing a disservice to students and faculty by not ensuring universally sufficient competence in its use. We also need to consider the future of AI in our strategic planning. When we set out to do the strategic planning work less than a year ago, the word ChatGPT had no meaning. It's quickly been compelling educators to rethink assessment models and near-term future of education. We need to be future-ready and nimble enough to adapt to a quickly changing environment. I'm personally heartened by the strategic planning efforts that we've undertaken and have been undertaken by the administration over the past 12 months, and I'm confident that Dr. McKinnon and his team are more than capable of doing tremendous work to move our schools forward. But I worry often that our structure is its own worst enemy. We need to let educational leaders be educational leaders. This means boards of education staying in their lane, and more so, it means addressing the elephant in the room. Every year, the legislature passes new laws that affect education. Every year, the State Department of Education finds new reports that it insists the districts file, from lunch counts to sick days to test scores to spending to special education. These tests are carried out in central offices across the state. Here, they are carried out 3 times each. It is a perpetual cycle of reporting that results in 3 times the paperwork as Wilton, Westport, Bridgeport, or Norwich. And it takes away from our leadership's ability to lead instead of merely to administer. The world is only getting more complex and our structure continues to be a drag on our ability to keep up. It comes up from time to time at these tri-board meetings, but I think it's time to move past idle talk regarding structural change. In the past few years, the 3 boards have been unable to agree so much as an agreement for how to handle joint issues at these meetings or a concept around a common policy book. It's one thing to say we will work together, but another to continually pull in slightly different directions or entirely different directions when given opportunities to align. The result is a lack of a single vision and a perpetual administrative burnout at the expense of our students. When we all convene again in May, I'd like to have a regionalization topic on the agenda and move forward to undertake the work necessary to fully understand the costs and benefits of such a move, so the towns of Easton and Reading may be fully informed of what a fully regionalized school district would look like. As a seed for that conversation, and in light of my comments about AI, I asked ChatGPT about it. I described our specific structure and I asked for 3 reasons for and against regionalizing these districts. Here's what AI thinks. In favor of combining increased efficiency, improved resource allocation, and better academic outcomes. Against combining, a loss of local control, potential increase in bureaucracy, and reduced community involvement. So, it's my hope that everybody around this table in the community thinks long and hard about our structure, what we can do better, and whether we should be thinking about moving forward to regionalizing the next year.
I would say thank you first for putting that on the table. I would agree with at least having a discussion about it, even if it doesn't.
Mary, I'll come back to you at the end. Kyle, with me? Anyone else? Okay, I'm gonna beg your patience on this one. Mary, do you want to make a motion? This would be only for Region 9, to be very brief.
All right, guys, yes, please. I would like to make a motion for the curriculum committee of the Region 9 Board of Education. Set a calendar of meeting during the 2023 academic year. The dates are March 22nd, May 17th, July 19th, September 20th, and November 15th. All of these meetings would be at 1:30 p.m. and they would be held virtually.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
And there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Is that every other month or every month?
That was the every other month that we set the at the meeting that we set at the meeting.
I thought we talked about every month.
So we did have a discussion and we ended on the every other month, and that's what we moved on. Okay, that's good.
Any further discussion? All in favor? And we want to.
I'm abstaining because I don't fully understand what we're going to consensus.
5. Opposed? 2, 1. We'll move on from there back to our agenda.
Mike,
Yes.
does that need to be conveyed to the state tonight?
Yeah.
For that to be a valid
Yeah.
regular schedule, it has to be conveyed to the state tonight.
I think you're probably too late for the town clerk for.
Well, no,
You might be able to do it if just the chair sends it, but at least an attempt to send it to someone in the state, I think it's helpful.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll move on to our first discussion and possible action item, which is the central office budget. Dr. McKenna.
Good evening, board members. It's nice to see you all here today. Thank you for the audience for attending and for those watching at home on YouTube. Our goal tonight is to present the central office budget to each of the boards of education, Easton, Reading, and Region 9. We've already presented the central office budget in an overview format to Easton and Reading, and so we're providing each a more in-depth view of the central office budget tonight. As you know, other cost centers include our district-wide cost centers, our school cost centers, special education facilities, curriculum and technology. Tonight we are presenting not what I think. I don't think that the central office budget is a share. It's more of an equal share for each district. So I'm hoping that equal share can be approved, so we can set that as a constant number and move forward with the other deliberation in other parts of the budget. As you know, central office is really comprised in three areas: staff, facilities, and operations. And in the staff bucket, we have certified staff and non-certified staff. In the facilities bucket, we have central office, lease, rental, utilities, and so on. And in the operations area, we have legal fees, supplies, equipment, technology, hardware, and software. Tonight's presentation will be divided into three areas. The first area is functions of central office. Area number 2 is the central office organization. And area number 3 is the budget overview itself. Mr. Parkin, I want to thank you for some of your comments that you made concerning the organization and the roles and responsibilities of boards and the central office. I actually have a couple of themes that are very similar to that, which I'd like to talk to you about. So first, the functions of central office. Central office is like the nervous system in the body. We carry and deliver the signals from each of the boards of education back to the schools. The superintendent oversees many tasks, including hiring staff, managing budgets, monitoring student progress, improving student progress, developing a vision for the district, and so on. These are challenging and multifaceted tasks, and therefore we need a team of talented professionals and collaboration with the board to run a school district. So we can think about central office in different ways. From a leadership perspective, we lead either transformationally or transactionally. A transformation style is focused on building consensus, developing a shared vision for the organization, and coaching others to improve. A transactional style is more top-down, someone who values order and structure, someone who values rules and regulations to complete objectives, to move supplies around, and to run the district from a kind of top-down perspective. Central office also performs many roles and tasks within the organization, and building the right environment and culture is an essential ingredient of macro leadership. And macro is generally considered to be kind of the big picture when it comes to leadership, and micro is generally considered to be kind of the task-driven types of activities that we engage in on a day-to-day basis. So the macro activities include things like strategic planning, innovation, long and short range priorities and action steps. It includes the oversight of our pre-K to 12 programming, the finance and operations of our district, human resources, professional development, how we train teachers, how we implement high impact instructional strategies, and so on. Even developing a budget is an example of a macro activity. There are many micro activities that we participate in, and that's really the management and compliance side. And so those things include developing contracts, certification, state reports, grant management, and so on. And Chris, you mentioned state reports. We did not talk about this, but the state of Connecticut requires a Board of Education to submit 75 reports per year. These reports are detailed financial, demographic reports related to financial operations, human resource operations, and school governance operations. But we are not one district, we are 3. And so that's over 225 state reports, not including federal reports, not including grants, which are all multiplied by 3. Most districts have 4 bargaining groups: teachers, admin, support staff, custodian, paraprofessionals, and so on. We have over 10 contracts that we need to negotiate. Most districts have 4 subcommittees, 1 board. We have over a dozen committees. The macro area is also focused on legal processes, documentation, residencies, homeschooling, employee discipline, workplace injuries, financial management, RFPs, bids, working with audit committees, working with the towns and payroll and so on. So I honestly hadn't really thought about the linear function of time and central office and the relationship between time and central office before, until working in ER9, where time itself is a valuable commodity. In ER9, the balance of macro and micro is even more important. If balanced, our workflow is evenly distributed in that middle zone. By the way, you have a copy of the presentation in front of you and you can see it on the screen. So if the macro and micro is balanced, then we can spend our work focus on working with the boards, managing the school district, working in terms of leadership, transformational, transactional, working with stakeholders, developing teachers, and obviously focused on student learning. And out of that 4 areas in terms of workflow, where we can have an increased productivity and we can make progress in certain areas, whether it's the classroom, whether it's working with teachers, whether it's just general productivity or working on a budget. So if time is a valuable asset, just consider these 8 things that we may be working on at the moment. State reports and grants. I mentioned there are over 225 state reports. High impact instructional strategy, bargaining contracts, stakeholder engagement, the calendar committee, which is something we did recently, the SIP, which is a student improvement plan, school budget we're working on now, and the district improvement budget. All of these tasks are kind of stacked, whether they're on top of each other or side by side, but they're not proportionate, right? So if you look at the visual there, you can see that we spent over 4 hours as a calendar committee recently working on the 2023-2024 calendar, which we're going to discuss tonight. And so sometimes we spend a lot of time in a certain area. And what we have to realize is if time is an asset, it may be decreasing time that we're spending somewhere else. And I joked with John tonight because he said that he wasn't on the calendar committee, but he watched 4 hours of the meetings. And I said, I don't know how you found the time to do that. And he said, well, I can, when I watch it on YouTube, you can double the time. And that would, if we could do that, that would be an efficient way. But there are ways in which we approach these different tasks, and some of the tasks become bigger. Not because we want to spend time there, that's just the way it is, but they do impact the way in which we spend time in other areas. Right? So in summary, the myriad of micro responsibilities for a small central office can stifle our ability to take action on larger, more macro initiatives. If you consider kind of the skeleton resources that we have in our curriculum department, you can contrast that with other Durgay school districts. And this isn't a theoretical exercise. I was an administrator and a leader in Richfield for 10 years as a principal. I worked in Westport, 2 high-functioning Durgay school districts. I know for a fact that they have more middle layers that can really focus on the macro work that gets done. So what can you do about this? There are a few choices. One, we can keep things the same, but if you keep things the same, maybe the results stay the same, and where we are is where we are. 2, we think about macro versus micro, and we start thinking about time as a commodity, and we truly evaluate how much time are we spending on things. 3, do we restructure? I actually wasn't thinking about restructuring board-wise. I was thinking about what are the restructuring that can take place in things that we have control over. And 4, do we add more support if we identify an area that needs more support? So if the micro area is an area that we need more support because it's taking time away from the macro, then maybe we need more support in the micro area, whatever that means. Our central office staff hasn't changed much. This is a table which represents kind of the staff that we have at central office. In the top area, you see the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the director of finance and operations and technology. That's a slight change that we made in the last 18 months. But generally, those 3 positions have stayed the same. following the pandemic, I think you added a director of technology and digital learning. And so you can see that has really been the change from 12 to 13 staff members. We have a human resources manager and 2 benefits and payroll clerks. We had 3 secretaries for the longest time. And we recently cut a secretary because we wanted to add an accountant. And you can see kind of the relationship in that table there in terms of staff. So there really hasn't been much change in central office in terms of position, but there is change in turnover. You've had 6 superintendents in 20 years. I don't know whether the average is about 3, that a superintendent lasts about 3 years. You may have had a longer stint or a shorter stint in there. That's a lot of change for a district. And it does impact how you move forward strategically. You've had 4 directors of finance and operations in the last 3 years, which is just interesting to think about. So this staircase represents the layers and supports that I've seen in other districts. And again, I've worked in other districts that include some of these third gates in the district. And we're missing that third gear in the gearbox, right? We have the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the curriculum support and leadership. That third layer is kind of not really something that we have here. And then obviously we have principals and teachers. So if we have a really good SIP, which is our school improvement plan, which I articulated back in October, which are a whole list of goals and activities and action steps that we want to improve our student achievement, right? So we want to improve reading scores by 5% next year, 15% in 3 or 4 years' time. We want to improve SAT scores. We want to improve all of our standardized measures. We may have to consider the pace in which we meet these goals, right? So I'll talk more about that in a moment, but this is just something that I've noticed. I think I brought this up to you before, but in general, it's an observation that I still hold, is that kind of that missing gear that we have, which can impact the implementation of our SIP and our strategic priorities. So in summary, to conclude this first section, you can fit our administrative team into this Honda Accord. Myself, Dr. Pearson-Hugo, Ms. Scafani, Vicky Cram, and the new Director of Digital Learning, which we are in the final stages of hiring a replacement very soon. We're a dependable team, just like this Honda Civic, this Honda Accord. You can see here that this car has received a 10 out of 10 rating from Car and Driver. It says it's versatile, comfortable, affordable, and fun. The 2023 Honda Accord shines in every way a car can, making it one of the favorite new cars on sale today. We have incredible gas mileage, we're reliable, we're dependable, we're going to get you exactly where you need to be. But it may take us longer to get to where we need to be and to the destination based on the micro functions of central office and the fact that we're running 3 districts where we have 3 times the amount of responsibility and tasks of most other school districts in terms of budgets, 10 bargaining groups, state and federal reports, over a dozen board committees, and so on. So I do not like selling us short. We are certainly not a Formula One car, which we know is obviously faster. But a Formula One car is not only faster, it comes with a pit crew, which is something that we don't have. Just to keep this metaphor going and to tire it out even further, this is a 2002 Honda Accord, also dependable. And I think the central office team has not changed much since this 2002 model. So having said that, moving on to organization and support. Thank you for indulging us in that introduction. We are proposing a change in the way in which our central office functions. And this is a preview for Region 9 because we are presenting that in the budget at the end of February. Easton and Reading, of course, has already seen this overview. So at central office, we have a human resources manager who is an integral component of our team. And I think you may have heard that Ms. Vicky Cram is contemplating her retirement. She served the district for many years with distinction. Therefore, we need to set a human resource placeholder in the budget next year. The human resource manager salary is approximately $125,000 plus a couple of stipends. So I recommend setting the human resource manager salary at an all-in value of $135,000 next year. The human resources manager position is done differently in different districts. Some districts have directors, some districts have assistant superintendents of human resources, and we feel the human resource manager role can be set at this level for now, and we can reevaluate that in the future. And speaking of a reevaluation, we've added a new position this year, which was the K-12 facilities manager. You recall us talking about it last year. We reevaluated that position 6 months into the year and determined that the current configuration and model does not really fit our needs. As a reminder, the operations and facilities is already an overwhelming responsibility for a lean central office team. And so we do need to think about that important role. Joel Barlow High School has had a director of buildings and grounds for many years. We tried a cost sharing plan with that position where Easton and Reading contributed about $17,400 to Region 9, which created this K-12 facilities manager. And in reality, this position was predominantly focused at the high school this year. And I think that's reasonable because as the school building with our largest campus, the high school has many needs, and our facility person only really touch base with Easton and Reading periodically. So one of our strategic priorities is to constantly reflect and improve on central office operations. And I still believe that we require a facilities manager in all districts. Therefore, we propose the following 3 steps. Number 1, return the K-12 facilities manager to the high school as a dedicated position as it was in the past. And the Region 9 board will have to define that position and in more detail down the road. Repurpose the $17,400 from Easton and Reading, which is currently in the facilities cost center, and reorganize the responsibilities of our current business manager position at central office and add the position of facilities manager to that position. As a result, we will be creating a position at central office named the facilities and operations manager. This position is cost neutral for Easton and Reading. Essentially, we're capturing the business manager salary as seen in this chart for approximately $90,000 and adding the $17,400 from Easton and Reading that created the position. So the visual on the slide kind of demonstrates what we've talked about with Easton and Reading over the past couple of weeks. This slide is a slight change to that because the previous slide demonstrated the reorganization and how Easton and Reading would move money from facilities in the central office. However, Region 9 would also need to contribute a share towards this position. And my recommendation would be a 3-way contribution of $17,000. And that would cover salaries, but also benefits and pension, which is something that I didn't contemplate fully before. So that is kind of how the outcome would look like. The capturing the business manager salary and contributing the $17,000 from each district. Right? So what does that look like? This organization chart shows the relationship between the financial component of central office, the superintendent, the director of finance, operations and technology, and the current layers under Sarah Stefani. Currently, we have 2 accountants, an account payable clerk. We just hired our second accountant, as I mentioned previously, by replacing the secretary. And Sarah and I share a secretary, which is an example of finding efficiencies in central office and kind of meeting our needs. You can see the business management position in this chart right now. And you can see that we would replace that with the facilities and operations manager. The new position would still manage transportation and food services. Their accounting responsibilities will be shifted to the second accountant that we just hired this year. And the new position would take on facilities, the facilities management piece. In an average day, Sarah receives 5 to 10 phone calls, numerous emails concerning facilities. Our aging buildings require a hands-on approach, not just for daily breaks fixes that occur, but as we strategically plan capital investments over the next 5 to 10 years, there's a lot of money that we can pursue from state and federal sources, We can find economies through developing RFPs and defining contracts and managing projects. And we're looking for someone who is knowledgeable in operations and facilities management, who could also plan with architects, enhance the learning environments of our schools, plus carry on the responsibilities of our business manager position as well. So section 3, finally, this is a section that delves into the budget overview. Some of these budget drivers are probably pretty familiar to you. Based on claim analysis, health benefits are going up by approximately $30,000. We previously had 3 secretaries, one did not take benefits. Our new accountant who replaced that FTE will be taking benefits. Our new director of digital learning, who is a new position that will be replacing Sarah, because Sarah now is the director of finance and operations, is expected to take benefits. And so that really defines the need for a 22% increase, which is about $30,000 in medical insurance in the central office cost share. Salaries have been budgeted for non-certified and certified staff at 2.5%. And as discussed, we would transfer funds from the facilities cost center into central office for the equal share of the facilities and operations manager. Electricity and general supplies are increasing. We talked about that in Easton and Reading. We'll go into more detail about electricity in Region 9. General supplies are increasing. Toilet paper's gone up 47 cents a roll and so on. And so those general supplies are increasing as well.
Very important.
Right. So in summary, again, central office again is not so much a cost center, but an equal share for each district. And the total share is $732,475, which represents an approximate 6.8% increase budget to budget. If you remove the health insurance increase alone, that means the increase would go from a 6.8% to a 2.5% increase, which is about what we're budgeting for certified and non-certified staff. My overall impression of this cost center, if you didn't get that in section 1 of the presentation, is that you are getting a remarkable return on your investment, considering a small staff managing 3 districts. I can honestly tell you again, I said this in the previous 2 presentations, this has been some of the most complex and time managing work that we've done over the past 3 to 4 weeks, developing these budgets. And it does take time away from those other areas which really stack up. And I just want to thank Sarah and Vicky and Stephanie and our entire central office team for helping us put together the budget. So finally, the central office budget will represent $2,197,425, which equals an equal share of $732,475. And now I can give you the final page of your presentation, so that you didn't look ahead and spoil the news. And thank you. That concludes our presentation.
So could you clarify the $17,000 from each district that go into this modified position? Is that 17,000 times 3 to 51,000 in the 2.1 million, or is that also sitting in the 3 other budgets?
The 17,000 is sitting in your Reading budget and sitting in the Easton budget, but it's sitting in the facilities cost center.
Does it make any sense to increase this number by $51,000 and take it out of those other 3 budgets? Does it make any difference to the administration?
It doesn't make any difference to me.
Well, questions for Jason before my board?
Jason, as part of your strategic plan, do you have sort of an out or vision of those other roles that you were describing layers are missing? The plan to kind of get that?
Well, in the Easton and Reading budget, we did propose a K-8 math coordinator, which would be an example of that middle step 3 curriculum layer. And in our strategic priorities in general, we talk about constantly thinking about what do we need to do to kind of develop our strategic vision. And since you brought that up, Sharad, this is the website that we've developed that captures our strategic plan. I think you saw a couple of slides in previous presentation. This is it's a demo site. It's not put together yet, and so we're still working on some finishing touches. But it does define, in terms of sharing this with stakeholders, why we need a strategic plan, what the ongoing metrics and goals are. So a key thing about strategic plan is not just a list of things we need to do. As we're doing those things, we also need to keep an eye on student achievement, right? And so we've got this relationship, as I showed you before, between the SIP and the DIP and our strategic priorities, and they overlap, right? And so on this strategic plan site, you'll talk about how we have goals and metrics, where we are now, where we want to be in 1 year, where we want to be in 3 years. In addition to just metrics, we've talked about the idea of milestones. And so these are the important things which kind of capture your heart and mind, not just improving scores by 3%, right? In terms of, smarter balance, but students will complete 500 computer science lessons by grade 12. Oh, sorry, by grade 7. And so we're actually looking at a resource right now where we're increasing coding opportunities in the elementary level and studying how we can fit that into the curriculum, how we can start doing Python by grade 6 and 7, and not just Scratch where we're swapping things from one place, but actually writing code. And that could lead to an increase in the percentage of students taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade. And so that milestone of increasing the percentage of students taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade is related to a strategic priority around improving math achievement. So there's improving math achievement. How do we do that? Hiring a K-8 math coordinator. Thinking about the ways in which we can reorganize our intervention services and our academic centers at the high school, including coding. And so hopefully we can kind of fit these things together. And you can see here there are other things, right? Ensure high quality learning, increase student collaboration, expand computer science pathways. These are the things that really kind of capture people's attention and engagement. Not so much that let's increase SAT scores by 10 points, right? That's important, but we have other milestones as well. This website kind of defines the process and reminds everyone how we got there, what the priorities are. It kind of defines, it shows our schools, that this is our district schools. We are 5 schools, but we're 3 districts. There's our enrollment, there's our budget. The development process reminds everyone how we got to this point, who was involved. Our learning priorities, we have 4 on the learning side, 2 on the operational side. Talks about the key elements of the plan, which is in the website. And finally, the reason why this is not ready yet is because these are our strategic priorities and actions, right? And so how we map these out is going to be important in the future. And whether we have the Honda Accord, and how long it takes for us to get through these 75 priorities, or whether we have the race car and we can move faster with the pit crew that we need, right? So that is all budget related. So will I answer your question? Sure.
The reports that we're responsible to submit to the state, who actually fills those out, spits them out?
It depends. Here are all the reports, and I'm just gonna, you can kind of look at the screen as I move through them. They're different reports for different reasons.
I realize that, but it's teachers, right? It's administrative staff.
It's mostly central office. Sometimes principals fill out, a small percentage of reports. In New Fairfield, which was a district where I was the assistant superintendent, we had a staff member, their only job was to focus on filling out state reports. But there are things like the minimum budget requirement, excess cost grants, Title One, test participation, accommodations for SAT. Some of that's an example of school stuff. The profile and performance narratives, the disciplinary offense collection, the ED 166. That's a famous one.
It might be helpful to know as well that in some cases, it's not just a matter of filling out the report and submitting it, having these one way. And in many cases, such as the grant process, we'll submit a grant to the state and then it will be brought back to us for some revisions or to refine. And then there are many different layers of approval. So it's, it requires a lot of time, it requires monitoring and then a fair amount of back and forth, because depending on the report or the grant, there is certainly input from the school as well. So it means it's a matter of some meetings and gathering necessary input in order to accurately reflect our needs and what we're requesting.
As far as like resource allocation goes, I've been looking at resources as super expensive or could be cheaper. What it sounds like you're saying is if there was somebody here that we could hire a sort of more cost effective to manage some of this stuff, and we wouldn't be using really, like your time would be much more expensive. We better allocate resources that way. Correct? So we had somebody dedicated to do something like the reports, then you guys aren't stuck doing some of this admin overhead.
Yeah,
And
I think it kind of comes down to this slide, which is right that we spend more time related to compliance.
So why not request a person to do that?
Because we've requested the K-8 math coordinator and we've requested other things and we're conscious of taxpayer investment and about incrementally adding each year. And so it could be something that we add to our strategic priorities where we say, let's add something in here related to efficiencies or something, and that we could add a state report writer or a state grant writer and reports.
Are we leaving money on the table by not submitting for more grants?
No.
I don't think we're losing out on money. When I first arrived, I did notice that we did not submit a report on time for a child nutrition lunch, and we missed out on a $200,000 reimbursement from the state. So that was a mistake where we missed out on money because a report wasn't submitted. I can't remember. I sent
That
you a memo
wasn't
on
a
that.
grant.
Yeah.
That wasn't a grant.
We're reporting by.
That was more of a report that could have been submitted and then and so on.
Further questions from Brad? Anything else? Easton?
So just to clarify, if I understood your answer to John and Shrock's question, you're prioritizing resources right now that have the most impact on students in terms of instructional support in favor of you guys keeping some lion's share of work that's administrative to ensure that our kids have higher quality instruction.
Yes, I think that's fair.
Anything else? Region 9, Cheryl.
Two questions. Great presentation. Thank you. Very helpful. Who the business manager, given that it'll be kind of a new position, will the facilities person in each building report to that individual?
Bring up that chart.
Or will they revert back to the old structure of reporting to the principals or heads of school?
Well, it's really how we wish to define it. Generally in districts that I've worked in, you have a director of facilities, that's a K-12 position, who oversees and evaluates the custodians, and they're mutually evaluated between the principal and that director position. So when I was a principal, I evaluated my custodian on day-to-day operations within the school, but my my director of facilities from central office also evaluated them, so it was kind of a joint responsibility. So that is something that we would have to look at and take a look at the qualifications of the person that we hire. I presume that we would develop a job responsibilities, a posting and job responsibilities, I guess, requirement that would focus them on overseeing custodians and kind of the cleaning, break, fix type responsibilities of the school, plus the broader management responsibilities.
Curious if you've seen a difference in the prior structure we've had versus what we have now, what you're contemplating, at least from my view, right? It's an individual view. I would presume that having someone overarching all the facilities in all 5 buildings might lead to efficiencies and economies of scale in terms of ordering toilet paper, like you mentioned, supplies, right? Whereas in my limited history, it seemed that we didn't have those opportunities because it was siloed. I don't know if that's accurate, it's just a perception, but this is probably more of a comment, but I welcome if you have any immediate reactions as to how that could be, a good outcome, or how this new structure could.
I think
contribute to
that's
that.
a good outcome, but that's only capturing a small amount of funds by ordering 5 schools. I see the greatest opportunity in pursuing state money and grants, where the turnaround is $200,000 rather than $20,000 on ordering everything together and finding efficiencies, right? Like looking at the way in which our buildings use oil and how we have controls in terms of heat and electricity and so on, and looking for state grants to offset improvements in the way in which we upgrade our lights, and those things overall can be the greatest cost savings over time. And someone who's knowledgeable in those areas would be someone that we would target.
And then second question is with respect to technology, that website looks fantastic and will enhance our communication. So to that, I would presume that the kind of overarching websites, the ER9 website as it currently stands, would hopefully be in that plan as more of a comment and hopefully be under some kind of oversight that Sarah has currently. So it's more of a comment, hope / question.
So the answer is that there's a particular product that that I looked at last year, but I was very excited about. But I said to them, you don't have all the pieces that I need for my tri-district. And here are the things that I really need you to build out. And when you have built them out, you give me a call and we'll go down that pathway. So about a week ago, they called and they said, so an example, Cheryl, specifically would be that you have a very challenging calendar structure because there are lots of calendars, and having one view for all the calendars where you could see just Easton or just Reading or just Region 9 or all of them and the tri boards all in one place doesn't sound like it would be such a big deal, but with all of the many stakeholders who contribute to those things, building that from the back end was a larger task. So very specifically, that was one of the things that I was looking for, and I really wanted we are primarily a Google district, and so I really wanted something that could build off of that platform. So that vendor is now ready with something that really looks good, and now we can move forward with that. So the answer is yes. And we have, we are in the final stages of our new, bringing on board that director of technology and digital learning to help facilitate that. And so I feel we have all those pieces coming into play with the right product, the right person, the right vision. And so taking that and combining it all together. So I think we have a lot of different pieces that are ready, that will be ready to launch. So I'm really excited about that. And I do. I get really excited about it, so.
We did not set that up for everybody's. And just a comment, I think I'm excited, while I'm not on the K-3 boards, I'm excited to hear that we're investing in curriculum. What I love to hear is perhaps not in this budget, and appreciate the comment about trying to justify the staggered ask for the communities. So to that, I would hope that my colleagues and the districts would also support in time better or improved coordination between the K through 8s and the high school. So I'd love to be able to see that continued investment going into the high schools.
Everything?
Just one question on the stipends for the, human resource manager. Can we get that dollar amount at some point?
Sure, it is approximately $10,000, and there's the webmaster stipend and the mail stipend. And I think the delta is between the 125 and the 130. I can get you that information.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I actually just have a comment with regard to, following up what Cheryl said with regard to the coordination of the K through 12. And I'm hopeful that, some of these positions will actually, give increased cooperation or availability of follow-up. Like, for instance, we have Project Lead the Way at Helen Keller. They don't have that in Reading. And to your point about increasing the engineering and computer courses and things like that at the high school, that Project Lead the Way goes all the way through high school with an already, a curriculum that's already done. I'm not saying that's what we need specifically, but to look at something like that where it's not one program in Easton, one program in Reading, and then somehow we figure it out at the high school, if there could be more coordination between what happens. And I know there is, but just an overall plan for those kind of things, following through and to give the kids, sort of the best, the deepest background in those things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to confirm that, this is an increase of 6.9%. Is that the right math?
6.88.
6.88.
6.88.
It's out to a budget. Yes.
So
We went out to a
With
few
some
decimal
rounding.
points.
We went out to a few
Recall-
decimal points and then, so yes.
We recall last year that you started talking about that extra dollar that someone paid.
So I said no more percentages and just a dollar amount so that we could all have the same dollar amount and have it be the same for all three, rather than one paying like with extra 12 cents or something along those lines. And,
I actually just did the big number, so the 2 million.
yeah, you have to,
Right,
yeah,
but approximately.
approximately within $50, which is
Yes.
probably what you got to, right? Or within 3, so yes.
Sorry, can I just, as a clarification again, the 51,000 transfers from our budget is not included in the 6.8888 increase.
Say that one more time.
The 51,000 transfers from our central office facilities lines is not included. in
No,
this budget
not
increase
from,
of 6.8.
not in, so
So
no,
there's another
So in-
51,000.
But there's 34 sitting there now that aren't in the
that's,
current year number.
that's not in the
The
current year.
Easton Reading contribution is existing this year at 34. Next year it'll be 51 because all three districts are contributing. And so if you're trying to do a percent increase of what the contribution is, you have to add 17, and you have to add 34 this year.
So 34 into this year is not in the 6.
Correct.
It's in, yeah.
It'll increase the number from 6.9, but not by a function of adding 51,000. It'll be a function of adding 34 and 50.
Anything else, Ben? Yeah. Okay, so I just have a couple questions. So, on that list that you had up with the reports, is that a comprehensive list or that's just the kind of the same?
That is a list off the state, that is directly off the state website. So,
No, I guess where I'm going, rather than belabor it, it might be helpful to get a list. Get that list so we can better understand exactly how many reports we're talking about and how many that are reflected in, and just so that we can kind of understand
I will,
the amount of work that's involved in all of that. I think that would be helpful for us to be able to see that.
I'll send everyone a link directly to the state website, and the state website has it organized in 3 ways. They have it as a PDF. They have it, maybe in 2 ways, PDF, an Excel document, maybe a Word document, maybe I'll do all of them. And so you can see the complete list. What I did was we downloaded it as a Google Doc so that we can identify where things.
I'm just wondering, is it hundreds of reports? Is it tens of reports? Is it
70-something, 75 reports.
It was 75 up there? Okay, that's what I could, that's what we could figure out.
76 reports. Some of these reports may be, a couple of them may be for like a private school only. So, but I would say in some, close to 70 reports.
And that's over the course of the whole year, or those are, some of them are monthly that repeat.
You can see the dates right there.
I'm not looking for specific, I'm just trying to get a general feel for the number, that's.
Yeah, so, here we go. We start in October, and you can see some of them are the 20th day of each month. Some of them are
September monthly, and
Yeah.
some of them are quarterly.
What's closer to 100
Financial-
report?
for
What you-
financials, They often ask for it to be updated at different times. So you do one submission and then they do an evaluation and then you submit again and then they do an evaluation and then you do a final. So they're at different, are different.
Like the
points.
EFS report, which is number 6. You submitted it 2 times, September 1 and December 31st.
Are you thinking about it?
I'm trying to get a better sense whether these are, filled out by the superintendent or the assistant superintendent, whether they're filled out by, office, assistants, whether they're done by,
It varies.
manager for
Sometimes
food, whether they're.
Sometimes there's data collection that happens at the school level, and then it is sent to someone in central office. Always one of the senior leaders will review and approve what's submitted. And then it really depends on the report or the grant, in terms of the frequency of submission. Could be once a year, could be once a month. Sometimes it's,
So
turn
they
it in a
vary.
year, and then
I
you
was just
evaluate at the
trying
end
to-
of the year.
Gather some more information as to how many were actually.
I'll try it. I'll send you the URL. That's only state reports. There's also federal reports and the Office of Civil Rights. And
What about board member requests? Are they on that?
that's a different area.
Infinite symbol.
Yeah. Yeah. What does that look like?
That's not tracked, but if we track, that would be scary.
Okay. So seeing no further questions for the superintendent, we'll open it up. If someone wants to make a motion, we can have discussion. Oh, I didn't go any.
No, we did.
Karen, yes, I stood up.
General comment before we go into motions, which I think it would be my general preference to not have central office spending disaggregated with the 17,000 floating in the 3 districts. And my preference would be to add 51 to that number. Or wherever the number bottoms out at, have it so we're not saying we're charging each district $17,000 for facilities just because that confuses people and gives rise to a conversation 2 years from now, which is, I thought we said this about something.
Or that we don't want to pay the 17, so. How do you break the time?
Anything else? If we're paying the salary of the central office like anything else, we should budget it out of there. Otherwise, we're setting up a precedent where we're gonna start disaggregating expenses for convenience, and I don't like that.
That is what I wanted.
Okay,
So that would, in effect, reduce the Reading and the Easton budgets that are currently proposed by 17 of these.
I mean, it'll be neutral because it'll be increasing our
Right,
share.
it's neutral to the town.
Neutral to our budget too, because right now we see it's 732.
They're in the same
And we're
budget.
making 749 by taking the number
Just
off.
shifting it to
Yes. Pocket, right pocket. And that's my personal preference, we can do whatever we want, but that doesn't change.
So for your suggestion, that would add the 51 to that number.
It would make it 2,248,425.
I did what Chris is saying. So I.
Which is gonna look like a larger percentage increase than it is because of the way it's accounted for this year.
You sure it's not already there?
It's already there.
It's already there.
Actually, it's in the 2,197,000.
I thought it was.
It's already moved in there.
But is Region 9 in there?
No, and Region 9 is proposed in there, because we haven't presented Region 9 yet.
So we don't
So
have to
if
make it.
you- So,
Good.
Wait,
So-
sorry.
so Region 9's budget, we haven't presented Region 9's budget yet, just Easton and Reading. So it's already in Easton's and Reading's, and I just need to, like, it would be, I will change where the placeholders are. It's not gonna change your bottom line.
When you
number.
say it is
But,
already in,
it's already, I'm sorry, the 17, it's actually $17,400. And in looking at it, Dr. McKinney wanted it to be 17,000 instead of 17,400. So the difference for Easton and Reading would be a negative of $400 for each district, except for in Easton. Because in Easton, there is a slight clerical, clerical mistake, which we have remedied in the budget so that it is not, but I did not want to take it out of what was approved, because I did not want to have the approved numbers be not what was public, but that is in the amount of
$2,528.
$2,528. So your budget in Easton will be slightly adjusted in the amount of $2,528 down, and then an additional 400.
Well, fortunately, we haven't approved that yet, so you can make.
I didn't-
all the adjustments you
No,
want.
that doesn't.
It's an impact, it just changes the way that the percentage will look in Easton,
the resulting cost
The
share
resulting-
percentage will be different than in the other two districts.
slightly.
So that's
Right,
why-
So that's why I did not do the percentage, because in Easton, it's actually not 6.88, it's actually
6.86.
it's slightly different by $2. So,
Well, suffice to say, the incremental facilities is in the 2197, so.
it's in the 2197.
But it's not necessarily in Region 9, because you sent that.
Correct.
It's there, but it's just.
Yes, so if Region 9 approves this, if Region 9 approves this number, when we build their budget presentation, it will include this number in the budget.
This number being the.
This number being
197.
732,475.
Okay.
So depending on what Region 9 decides, that will be, we will plug those numbers in accordingly.
So you got what you want.
Did I not?
Okay, so,
So with all that said, is there a motion in Reading? If you want to go this way.
well, I just wanted to clarify one thing, so the 17.4 from Region 9 is not in that.
It is.
It is in that number.
Oh, it's in there.
Yes,
Okay,
Provision.
I thought I heard it was.
provisionally. So
It's in there because you have senior.
it's in there because it hasn't been,
I don't understand, I just wanted to
You
make
haven't
sure it's
seen yours yet.
in there, because I heard at first it wasn't, so I just wanted to make sure.
well, it will be if you say yes.
Hopefully by then, yes, we're done.
Okay, so with that, Mr. Parker,
Is there a motion in Reading on the issue? Chirag,
Motion for the Reading Board of Ed to approve the 2023-2024 central office budget of $2,197,425, which represents a share in the amount of $732,475 for the Reading Board.
there was a second.
second.
John Shanahan, I saw your hand first.
This is like.
We get buzzers.
Okay. Easton, you want?
Motion.
Second, the motion at Region 9,
Move for Region 9.
there's a second. Okay. Okay. Discussion,
Call the question in writing, all in favor? Motion carries unanimously. John, on the back. That's all I have.
No, do you want us to come back to you?
So I'll hold the vote open and for both.
I'll do a question in the stall, since we haven't. Since we haven't seen our budget yet in Region 9, the cost for our custodial person, is that what happens to that with these dues?
I think that will be, your board will need to decide a few different things when we come to that budget discussion.
So we don't,
So-
if there's an increase or it's neutral, we have to discuss what's gonna happen in that custodial line for us.
I see,
So
I see that as neutral.
it
Right.
could be neutral and it might actually, I think it's neutral, but you'll want to decide what, because that position was being shared, you'll want to decide what that looks like, moving forward. So depending on what salary you place that particular position back at in Region 9, that's what will kind of determine whether or not it's a decrease.
You had this position prior to 2022, which was the Director of Buildings and Grounds, so that
Yeah.
was,
And
in
that was
your budget. It's in your budget this year. And it will be in your budget next year as well. There might be some minor changes up or down, depending on what you do with that position. Is it still a Director of Buildings and Grounds? Is it a Facilities Manager position? Is it something else? But it won't be a budget increase.
So said differently, it's dollar neutral, but what those dollars are going to be allotted to who and to whom and in what form, that could change based on what Region 9 decides.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So there's a vote open in writing. Welcome back, John. The motion on the floor is the one on the screen. We can all vote again so they don't feel left out. All in favor of approving the budget of 2197425. Now, John.
All question in Easton, all in favor? And 6-0.
the Region 9, I always find this somewhat humorous, the fact that sort of in past on the 2 boards, but we don't do a lot at Region 9. Any further discussion, all in favor of the motions on the floor? All opposed? Same. What to do?
I was just gonna make a comment.
I asked for comments
What did you say,
again.
any comments and then you went right to a vote?
Oh, I'm sorry,
The comment.
make your comment one, vote's still open.
I feel like it's a really difficult position for Region 9 to be put in with the budget vote. I have full confidence in our administrative leadership. Please do not get me wrong with that. It's just as we've had not our whole budget presented in front of us first to be able to go through it. It's just, that's why I'm abstaining. It's just very difficult for me to approve without the whole picture.
Can I just, have you done this, or is this traditionally the timeline that you've done this in the past?
No, it usually takes 5 hours.
Different question. So do we normally do this in January?
So
December last.
Oh, no, that's gonna be 5 hours.
we've discussed this in the past, and, you know, we kind of landed on the process that we're using this year. But, yes, back in the day, we would have a tri-board meeting in January. And we would see the budget at least in January. Sometimes we would vote on it, and traditionally we would vote on it, but at least then everyone saw it before they saw their individual budgets. But as we've evolved over the last several years and the challenges of new administration and trying to get everything fit within the timeline of reporting and being ready for the towns, we are kind of where we are now, and that's again,
I'll go out of line, but we're talking about a $60 million contribution to education within the 3 districts, right? Give or take. This is $45,000 per district. So that's how I rationalize, and yes, we've seen our budget. We haven't approved our budget. We've seen it, we talked about it in one, and not to trivialize $45,000, but what I've seen, what I've heard from the administration, this makes sense. I think Sharad would echo the comment that I was going to make, which is this is a stepping. I mean, we need to do something, whether it's redistricting or whether it's adding support to central office, because we are in a perpetual, we're the hamster on the treadmill with the administration and the folks that we have doing this job. It's a time consuming, difficult role, period. We all know that, been on the board for 8 years, it's crazy. So, and the turnover is evidence of that, among other things. Some of the turnover has just been for other reasons, but so, and I'm not saying, vote this in or vote it out. I'm just, my personal bit is to vote it forward, but this is a small sort of step, hopefully in the right direction with helping central office with how they see reallocating the resources and the administrative tasks, micro, macro, management. So
Our structure, for better or for worse, puts a brighter spotlight on these $2 million than any other dollars in our budget. And it creates a lightning rod effect that has over time created a situation where we don't have supports in central office because nobody's willing to say central office went up X% this year because we brought on these supports, because it stands out like it sits on an island.
Right.
If we were a single district looking at a single budget, cost of central administration, 0.3%, people will go next page. We wouldn't spend an hour talking about any of this. We just say, great, next page. And that's where having 21 people and 21 opinions talking about 3% of the budget has gotten us into trouble before. So if it made folks under the boards comfortable and if the administration were prepared, I'd be happy to hold this meeting in December next year and move forward on the fiscal year central office budget before anybody's seen the other budget so that it's a level playing field, because I don't think that anything in here is going to move the needle from my perspective on the budget.
that's just what they want to hear, starting
Yeah.
the budget conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
We do the calendar for 26 with the budget.
Is February not an option for us to do this meeting,
We did it in February last year.
Yeah. And did that give Region 9 an opportunity to see the
You
budget?
still haven't seen your budget in February,
No.
right? You don't usually see your budget until, yeah.
but again, I think we paused the first week of January this year, right? And we pushed everything forward a week, so I think that's why it's slightly.
I agree with everything that Chris said. I agree with everything he said, but I also agree with Mary Lee's point of view is like, it sure is nice. I love the luxury of knowing what our budget looks like and saying this fits and this is gonna make sense. And you gotta have faith that they're gonna do the right thing for you and sort of help you work through the process the same way they did with us. And that's hard to do.
Yeah, I totally understand that, and in favor of everything here, but we're also on a finance board.
Yeah.
And again, we haven't seen our budget. We've committed $45,000 now. We have no idea what other programs we're gonna have to cut, because we had a presentation a couple weeks ago, or not even a couple weeks, last week, where there were some new programs that we wanted to bring into the high school that we may not be able to do because we've committed $45,000 without seeing our budget. So and it doesn't feel right to do that. to the taxpayers.
It's always been the perspective of members of these boards that if any of the 3 boards got into their own budgetary trouble, that we would cooperate to the extent we would come back to the table and say, look, I need another $40,000 to make my budget work. How can we reopen this and where can we go to get that? And I think that that's always an option between now and when budgets are finally sent to voters, that remains an option. And I don't think saying we're our own finance board or not has any bearing on that whatsoever.
Quick solve in the hopes to move this forward and not from Mike's point, have this be a 4 or 5 hour meeting. In the month of January for next year, whoever consider putting this meeting first, the first week, second week of January, whatever the break is, then you follow with Reading, Region, Easton, Region. Quick solve, we're done. Anything that we have where you have to have tri-boards make individual decisions that culminate in getting kind of some kind of consensus for 21 people, same thing. Just to move that forward, again, so we don't repeat this conversation, which we will inevitably do once any of us turn over.
So, anyway, we have a budget.
We're 602.
Excuse me?
You're probably 6-0.
Here, you want, it was.
Six again.
Right. On you.
Jeff, can you do that again?
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you.
Okay. So we will move on to item B, which is consideration of the 2023-2024 school calendar. I'm just gonna tee it up because I was elected chair of the calendar committee. And so just for create some awareness, the boards right now are kind of lagging behind our customary timing of adopting calendars, usually a minimum of like a year in advance in order to allow families ability to plan ahead. Calendar committee held 2 very thoughtful meetings this month to consider the calendars through June 2026. We made the decision to focus on the 2024 calendar because we felt that that was something that we needed to consider for approval tonight. The main focus of our discussion in that 2024 calendar consideration was really centered around the return of the past practice for a week-long February break. The recommendation from the calendar committee is to return to a week-long break. This is reflected in the proposed calendar that all of you received in the board packet. It's the goal of the committee to work through the 25 and 26 school year calendars over the coming months and bring them forward for approval at the May joint board meeting. Should the boards adopt this calendar with the 1 week break in February, the committee would look to present 2025 and 2026 calendars that maintain that week-long break. The committee did include members of the staff from all 3 districts, and that was valuable in considering a number of factors relating to the impact on instruction. I think that was very helpful. After a lengthy discussion, the consensus of the committee aligned with the survey, which the survey had kind of a relative majority of responders that were in favor of the restoration of the 1 week break. The committee vote was a majority vote though, of membership represented at the meeting in favor of the 1 week break. Again, very quickly, but some history. School boards in Connecticut began reassessing the need for the week-long break in February back in like 2011, 2012. That was a time when autumn snowstorms and actually autumn superstorms and heavy winter snowstorms forced numerous school cancellations and created challenges that many school districts found difficult to resolve. Our 3 boards faced an onslaught of criticism when we were forced to abbreviate the April break in order to comply with the 180-day minimum state requirement. So that's something that we have all kind of been through before and we should be aware of. Severe weather conditions in the fall and in the winter are inconsistent and truly unpredictable. Again, 2012 was Superstorm Sandy, and that was a several day, if not a week, cancellation of school. And then we got, other snowstorms later on in February, which was why they were after the February break and put us in a position where we had to abbreviate April. But on the, on the bright side, we've never had anything as impactful as like the Witch of November storm, which occurred in 1975. And that storm produced winds in excess of 100 miles per hour and waves of 35
What was the
feet.
February break that year?
Not sure, but
He wasn't on the calendar today.
not sure, but that storm did sink the largest cargo ship at the time, the Edmund Fitzgerald. So just so you know, so the tragedy did actually lead to a fine ballot by Gordon Lightfoot. But anyway, there is there's a little history of the storms and the potential for us running into issues, but again, the thoughtful discussions on the committee felt that the much needed break between February and April, between January rather and April, was a strong reason for having that break and for considering that people back in. So with that, I would say, as we did with the budget, we'll go around. If anybody has any strong comments that they feel that they want to express, we'll ask for a motion first, then we'll go around very quickly, and then we'll vote. And then if we need to circle back because there's some dissension, then we'll go into I think a real deep discussion if we need to.
Can I briefly pile on to your summary from the calendar?
Absolutely. Are you gonna talk about the Edmund Fitzgerald?
I'm not. So just from the K-8 perspective, because the Easton and Reading calendars are going to align identically, there's some variation on the Region 9 side. Material changes from what we're accustomed to in this calendar are the introduction of the week-long break in February and a move of the PD day that has been the Friday of Martin Luther King into January 2nd. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is to give staff the opportunity to reacclimatize and get prepared for the new semester. And two, in consideration of a comment from staff that I particularly found valuable, which was that 5-day weeks are better for instructional continuity than a series of 3- and 4-day weeks. And as proposed, the calendar in January, we're going to go 4 days, 4 days, 4 days, 5 days, 5 days, and you get into February. And by doing this, we eliminate the number of sort of stubby weeks. When you think forward to the next year, the Christmas holidays are at a funny time, which is going to lead to a long break in 25 and 26 in December, January, which will push the June end date a little bit closer to the 20s of June with the February break. So the calendar committee is likely to discuss what to do with the Columbus Day holiday and whether to remove that from the calendar in the out years so that we sort of truncate the back because of the lengthy December. So flag those as things you might hear from May, but the material changes for K right now are that January day and the February.
Right. And just to add to what Chris said, I think the bundling of the PD day in January is a 1-year opportunity because of the way the holidays fall next year. It won't be
Next year, to add that day, you'd be adding it onto a Thursday because of the leap year, and so you wouldn't want to have a 1-day week at that point. So that's where it gets a little bit fun.
I think
Yep.
Columbus Day is not an option.
Well, I was gonna circle to that as well.
After we-
Columbus Day is a contractual day,
Yeah.
and we would have to look to either a floating holiday or options. It's just something that I
It's
think we're gonna
the point of
discuss
discussion that's going to be floating out there.
for out here,
Yep.
just so that we're. And I would also mention that we did also have a discussion with the administration for them to present a professional development structure, which would be, the optimal way of delivering PD in a way that maybe we could start to align it from all 3 districts. And that's something, again, that we couldn't do right here and right now, but it's certainly something that the administration is going to work to kind of bring that forward so that we can consider that for the 25 and 26 calendar. Anything else? Okay, you want to call for a
So we'll
motion?
look for a motion in writing with respect to the 23-24 calendar.
Make a motion to approve the 23-24 calendar.
Thank you. Is there a second? John Shanahan's passed on the budget today.
Okay, Easton,
Same motion in Easton.
Second, Mission.
Region 9,
A motion, Region 9.
second. Okay, all right. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, a couple of questions. So Mike, repeat for me, please, what the net change is for Region 9's calendar year over year.
The February break is.
I mean, within the entire calendar. I know it's being extended, but what does that mean for the rest of the year? Like for extending the end, because it looks like if I look at the calendar for this year versus what we're proposing, it doesn't look like the end date would be about the same. Is that correct?
Because we saved
Yeah,
days
3
for Jewish
days.
holidays next year because they fall on weekends.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it comes
That's
out.
why
net
it kind of-
roughly the
The
same.
end date moves, and I would also say that I know and I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna look at Stephanie because I believe I'm correct, but the PD days in Region 9 currently are still on early release days. And administration tends to need additional time to kind of schedule them. So they may move from here, or are they all in here and they're final?
They are not all in here.
Okay,
Region
that's
9
what I-
has more early dismissal days than the two K-8 districts. But for the early dismissal days that are in common across all three districts, they are the same, and they typically happen February, March, April, and May, and they are not reflected in this calendar.
Right, so there's additional PD days that will be added when it's published at the beginning of the school year.
And not for nothing, does it make sense for Region 9 to consider a January 2nd PD day,
Yeah,
which
that's right.
was, which would
Just going.
which would create a common last day that slides back? Like,
What, an
just a
additional
comment on
day?
January 2nd.
Second,
In addition to the intersection day, right?
And if we change that, would that synchronize the calendar across all three districts, meaning if I have siblings in all, in 3 buildings, they'll actually get the same day off.
With the exception of the
not
intersection day.
entirely.
Right, do we have?
On the last day of school at Barnes.
Intersection day and election.
Last
Election day?
school and the lower school, because it depends on when your finals are and everything, so it's not like the last day of school.
Yeah, the last day does move,
And if you're a senior, it's a week
and
early.
we don't have any full.
Are the
PD
teachers
days.
on intersection?
What
Are the teachers off on intersection?
No, they're not. No, it's workday for our teachers. It's the transition from one semester to the next. I would be concerned about adding another day in January without the input of the JBEA. I know that every day, especially in the last weeks before the end of the semester, are very good.
So the last game of the semester is always gonna be the 91st day anyway. So it kind of
Exactly, yes.
doesn't- it just depends
Exactly.
what academic is.
The start of the year, Region 9 won't have the January 2nd.
No, they will not.
So that may impact households that are split with high school and.
It could, right? So typically the K districts have a staff day in January that falls later. And that was the one day that we moved.
I understand, if you've got high schoolers and below.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Like I
I think
said,
I'm wrong, Mike, you mentioned that the committee, there was a majority of the committee, so I assume that it meant that people weren't unanimous, is that correct? On the committee,
that would be correct.
okay, so, but the majority supported that, so I guess, would you have, I don't need names, I just kind of want to get a sense of how much we wrestled with it. What was the vote? And likewise, what was the voting by all the families in both towns? What do you mean by majority?
Okay, so the results came out, there was something like 46 point something to 40
to 10.
40 point something, so it was, about 46-41-ish, or 46-40. And then there was, 10% that wanted, the third model, or
How many people
13%, was it?
How many families responded?
Actually, there were quite,
Over 1,000.
well,
1,200 and something.
there was, that was the number of responses. Let's
Mike voted
clarify.
700 times.
One parent and another parent of the same. Or multiple caregivers.
If you watched the meeting, we did have that discussion. But again, administration felt that the sampling was valid, and it was useful. And it, you know, and so that you want to know the way the vote went, there was concern from the, staff member at Joel Barlow as to whether it might affect AP preparation. We had a long discussion about that, and we tried to, kind of vet through and see whether that was, you know, a significant concern or whether it was just, you know, a concern that it could happen. And so, I did vote against it because I was somewhat cautious of how that would affect, but I would say, again, as a member of the committee, that it was not a strong concern of mine that it was going to be impactful. It was something that was mentioned. And so, I did not object to the overall decision, but that's the way the vote went. So
You made the very valid point that there are other districts nearby that have AP classes, do very well on their AP enrollment, and also have February.
right.
I think all or nearly all of Durgay has the moved off.
Right.
And then we contemplate the impact of the break if we have snow and it adds to the end of the school year and which could be later than graduation.
So, if you look at the language at the end, it explains the way days will be made up and in which order. And we did go through that very carefully. And I will say that there had been a lot of confusion in years past as to the, graduation date and whether it needed to be after the last day of school. And, last year I did clarify that with the state, and you are legally allowed to have your graduation date before what is deemed the last day for all students. And seniors, as long as they meet the obligation of the school, that requirements for graduation, can graduate and receive their diploma. So I don't see there being a risk with, graduation ceremonies and, last day of school.
There was some discussion about the likelihood of a snow day occurring during the week we're not closed anyway, which sort of nets out.
Yeah.
The only comment I'll make is like a working parent and a dual, like working parent family, is that this many weeks off is really challenging for if you have young children, because now you have to take, it's really impossible for parents to take off 3 or 4 weeks typically of a work year. And so then you're looking at really challenging situations to find childcare, which is very limited in our town. So I'm not against the change. It's just, you look at Christmas, you have a week. Now February, there's a week. And then right after that, March or April, there's a week. So it's a lot of time. And if you have kids in 5th grade or below, happens to be my world, it's just really challenging. And you know, I think also quite expensive. It could be $2,000 for 1 week of childcare. So
Devin, I'm really sensitive to that comment. And I think one thing that has been a challenge in the calendar past is it's even harder to find childcare on one-off days where it's Fridays here and Tuesdays there and Wednesdays there. But if you tell the entire community February is going to have a break, the park and rec departments can and will plan cost-effective childcare options that otherwise wouldn't exist on 1 to 2 days off.
yeah, we are lucky. I mean, the community center in Easton does do a lot. You have a demand challenge, that's all. So park and rec here is now.
I have a comment about the schedule because I think it's 2 of the last 4 years. And I know weather's unpredictable, but 2 of the last 4 years with snow days and weather days, our last days of school have been pushed into that week of June 20 something. And many families, I think, plan either sleepaway camp or other camps that they have to pay for and commit to now. So when school gets extended into those later weeks, people have to choose between paying for something they can't use, or they have to skip school, and they make one of those choices depending on the family. I think especially with the Jewish holidays this year, it looks nice because of when those holidays fall. But in future years, when they're during school weekdays, these dates are all gonna look much later. So while it looks nice in this year, just because of how the holidays fall, in the future years, it will be later, and you get one or even two snow days, and now you're into that first week of camp that you paid for already. And I think that's a hard situation for many people who are planning for their summer and activities right now. They fill up.
And an attempt was made to account for that in as much of the way the days are made up in the back end. Holds that fourth week of June harmless until you've already eaten up the entire third week and the entire February break going backwards. So that was a point of conversation in the committee about when do a preponderance of camps start kicking in, and how do you balance those needs? Because on the other side, I've heard from families that say, when school gets out on June 7th, I've got no childcare for 2 weeks until my camp kicks in. And so you're never going to solve for all these contingencies, but that was a point of conversation. And that's why the order of days being filled holds that fourth week harmless in the third choice.
Right, and we did try to consider, all those points. And I will also say that, again, we're saying it's a full week in February, which is true, but really it's a net addition of 3 days. Because you were always gonna get the President's Day, but you were getting the Friday before the President's Day weekend. So it's a net that we added really 3 days. It's not that we've extended the calendar by 5 days. It really is only a net of 3 days. So just something to consider as well, but both very valid points, and again, not an easy task, the calendar. And I do, but before we move forward, and I do want to thank the administration, and Stephanie was in our meetings and painfully sat through the 2 hours, and also Vicky Cram for her work every year on the calendar. And I think actually this year Cindy DeMarco also did a lot of work on the calendar as well. So a lot of people kind of to thank.
This is a result of a lot of deliberation and really good insights from the faculty and staff, which were very persuasive in my view of this.
Yes, well, and I mentioned the staff in my initial thoughts, initial comments, so I didn't mention them.
In the
again.
past, it's been a
And
very
also the board members.
ministerial task. And
Well,
You guys really did a great job of it.
yeah, but this is the business we have chosen. So
But to be clear, we're only voting on next year.
correct, and again, the rationale was because we're talking in that 3 days, that the committee really wanted to take a deeper dive and look at the whole calendar, see if there's other ways. And again, to my point earlier, that we want to work off of an optimal kind of schedule of PD days. We also want to look at each of the holidays, how we are currently, utilizing them, and if there's a better, path forward. I will just share again, not to belabor the conversation, but I was opposed to Veterans Day when we first went to that model. I felt somehow it was disrespectful to veterans, and I always thought about the Veterans Day parades when I was a kid and how it was, a big community event. The reality is we don't have Veterans Day parades anymore, and the kids being here interact with the veterans, and they do a ceremony, and they get an education and a really a historical experience that we could not replicate if we weren't in school on Veterans Day. So I'm a strong advocate for keeping Veterans Day and things like that. I think that makes sense that we can look at, moving forward, if there are other models that we can improve on. So.
Did somebody look at just the average number of days that over the last 10 years or whatever, like, what's the average number of school closure days in a year? 3, 5?
Here, it's been around 5.
Yeah, but that's where it gets a little wonky, because like every 10 or 12 years, you have like that anomaly year when you get, and you can't plan for it.
No,
I mean, you know, it's just,
realistically, we're gonna be looking at the 18th, 19th on an average year. No, there's no such thing as an average year, I guess, because every year is gonna be different, but.
right.
Like if I can ask
Yes.
a question, being a parent, who after this year will have no kids in any of our schools. Did any board members who will have parents in our school next year, do any of you have a strong opinion that you're willing to share? And whoever didn't already say something, Devin, Chris already said something, Kathy, curious.
I have kids that are all young, so similar to Devin, I actually, Chris is down a resident, and it's a lot easier to deal with childcare when it's consolidated in that week versus the split up days. Fortunately, so when I voted for the consolidated.
I feel strongly about the supporting the week in February. You watch the videos, you'll see that. Just for the sake of, it's without it, it's 3 months where we go, without any long or extended break, and I think it's important to give people just time to breathe before you get back into it.
Thank you.
I've got a little one, and for me, I work from home, so for the most part, so I can understand the concerns about childcare because it's very expensive, but I'm able to find other accommodations, and I like the idea of having a week of not having to get up and get her out the door at 7 a.m. for school. So I think it's a welcome break from my perspective.
Okay.
Call the question.
Yeah.
Ready?
All in favor of Reading? Motion is adopted unanimously.
And Easton? Good, 6-0.
Region 9?
No.
I don't think Kathy.
Oh, I'm sorry, I looked quickly, I'm sorry. So you're opposed, yeah. All right. Okay. And it's early, yeah,
I can bring up the agenda.
Over here. So, that brings us to our second public comment. Seeing no public comment, go around quickly, any board member comment? Anything from Reading? Anything from Easton?
I just wanted to thank the administration again. I think you guys have done an amazing job, not only tonight, but setting the stage over the last few months for the budget presentation. And I will just say that third one that is very open right now, or very under-resourced, I do hope to see, I know it's not going to happen as much in this budget season, but I think you've set the stage for continuing to think about how we improve that area that is definitely been under-resourced. Because I've been on the board, especially in this town. But thank you.
Anyone from Region 9?
Thank you, everybody, for raising the bar, making this meeting shorter, raise the bar for the next meeting. And efficient.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, Reading. John Malafato, second, Laura, seeing no objection, we're adjourned at 9:21.
Motion?
Thank you, John.
All
All in favor? Yeah. Adjourned, 9:21.
Region 9?
Quick one, registration for a presentation or something like that.